I'm thinking about art and entertainment again. And what kind of prototypical experiences mark art and differentiate it from prototypical experiences mark entertainment. Kind of how they exist metaphorically as concepts, and sort of how they work together. And the way I'm thinking it at the moment is just in terms of etymology, I suppose, in that entertainment, as I understand it, comes from some word meaning to hold mutually. So with the idea of entertainment, I think, is the idea of kind of an embrace, or a holding together, or a sharing, a being co-present in the same space, in the same emotional space, in the same physical space, a very close allying, a kind of community, or communion almost, really, rather than community. And I think the experiences that we call entertaining, and which kind of prototypically represent entertainment, tend to do those things. So at concerts, for example, you know, if you wave your arms in time with the music and in time with everybody around you, you're kind of being entertained by that. You and your neighbours and the performers are kind of being enclosed in the same mental space and same emotional space. You will feel entertained. You will probably feel part of that community. You will feel quite purposive. You will feel something larger than you'll feel part of something larger than yourself. Those kinds of experiences, and that might be positive or negative. I'm sure that the participants in the Nuremberg rally all felt terribly entertained by that experience, and all felt terribly purposive about something that was larger than themselves, and all going through the same motions. And I think kind of ritualistic events, participatory ritualistic events, have that same kind of entertaining quality, that same embrace, that same inseparability between the participant, the action that one is participating in, the initiators of that action. It's all kind of held together in a single gestalt. When I'm using the term art just as a distinguisher from that, obviously there's lots of other ways I could be using it, but as a distinguisher from that, I'm considering it as a kind of being held away, being held back from, kind of separation, implicit in that understanding of art at least. And I think that's obviously made physically manifest in the kind of conventions of proscenium arches and frames and pedestals, plinths and frames around screens, as well as all the kind of institutional framing that goes on with all the various art products that places it at a kind of spatial remove from our understanding. Not from our understanding actually, from our from a certain kind of experiencing. So we're always aware to a certain extent when we're in the presence of art that we are not part of that experience, that we are separate from it. Or at least art always kind of reminds us of that, moves us in that direction. I think it's very likely, in fact I'm sure it's inevitable, that there is no experience which is purely entertaining and no experience which is purely art. There are always complex mixes of those things. And one of the things that I think is really interesting in relation to that I've just been thinking about is comedy. Because although comedy and laughing at a comedian, let's say, is a kind of classical example of entertaining in a conventional sense, I think in the sense that I mean it, it actually isn't. Because there's something very interesting about comedy, particularly comedy of violence and failure and humiliation, typical kind of British comedy, which tends to be in that kind of register. If someone was to fall over and apparently hurt themselves, the natural human reaction to that would be to probably wince in sympathetic pain, maybe to go over and help them, maybe to sympathise, to feel their pain in some way, and in other words, to be quite entertained by that experience, in the sense that I'm using it, to be held mutually within the terms of that experience. But you wouldn't laugh in that situation. It would not be a human experience, for example, to do the opposite thing, which would be to remove oneself completely, to have a kind of surgical detachment from the experience, at least not normally. Can't figure to go this way. And if one did do that, you certainly wouldn't laugh at it. You would have that kind of cool detachment. The only situation that allows you to laugh at it is this odd combination where you're simultaneously drawn in, simultaneously made to feel part of the action, and start to engage the processes of empathy and shared experience, and at the same time to recognize the detachment of the situation, that something about the institutional framing of the situation is putting in front of you. So the kind of duality, and that's what's producing the comedy, I think. So I think what I'm saying there is that most experiences, with comedy perhaps being a good example, are kind of mixtures of entertainment as an embrace and art as holding away, holding at bay, and detachment.